So I'll be presenting on a survey of nocturnal birds using bioacoustic signals and the influence of environmental variables. So as a way of introduction, the growth of the human population and the global economic activities has actually increased threats to biodiversity, and the current rate of biodiversity loss is actually under increase. This human population explosion has resulted to so many anthropogenic activities, which has resulted to habitat loss and change in land use type, environmental pollution, climate change, overexploitation, amidst other activities. And these all activities are resulting to high biodiversity loss, and with the sixth extinction crisis ongoing, which is mainly triggered by anthropogenic activities, there is urgent need to prioritize conservation actions in order to monitor this species loss and also to know the right action to take in which we can cope this extinction. So birds are important indicators of ecological health. They are also valuable indicators of environmental health, and so many research have shown that birds are sensitive to environmental changes. Therefore, they are more practical to monitor than any other taxa. Here in the tropical Africa, much conservation focus has been on diurnal birds. That's because diurnal birds are active during the day when there is easy access to sight, and there are more of them during that time. But then there is almost limited study when it comes to nocturnal bird. This could possibly be because nocturnal birds are actually cryptic and secretive, unlike there is some diurnal birds, and are active during the night when access to sites of study is usually difficult. Therefore, the nocturnal birds in Afrotropics remain one of the most poorly studied avian group, despite all the key roles they play in ecosystem functions. For instance, we have the owl, which serves as apex predator, regulating the population of rodents, and also the nigers, which are also regulating the population of arthropods, especially during the night when diurnal birds are not usually active. So the aim of this study is to assess the influence of some environmental variables, which the land use type, vegetation, and weather variables on Afrotropical nocturnal birds using acoustic cues. And the research questions we try to answer are the impact of land use type on nocturnal bird richness, and also we try to look at what vegetation variables influence this avian nocturnal species richness, and also does environmental weather variable has any influence on nocturnal bird richness. The study was carried out in Amrum Forest Reserve, which is an important bird and biodiversity area located in Plateau State, central Nigeria. The reserve is situated in Just East local government of Plateau State, and it comprises of 3 habitat types: the gallery forest, the rocky outcrop, and the savanna. We generated 20 points across the reserve, which are 10 points within the reserve and 10 points outside the reserve, which are spread across the 3 different land use types, which are the farmlands, the protected area, and the residential areas. We have 10 points within the reserve, 10 points, 5 points in residential areas, and 5 points in the farmlands. So we use passive acoustic monitoring for data collection. We placed a Joe-like digital acoustic recorder at each site and allowed to record from dusk to dawn. That is from 18 o'clock to 6 a.m. in the morning. And data was collected between November and December of 2021. So at each site, we placed a recorder at least 2 meters attached to a tree. And there we allow the recorders to record from dusk to dawn. For the acoustic analysis, we use the Audacity sound software to recognize calls, which we compared with the African bird sounds and also the Xenocanto to make sure and to also enforce identification of this species. So we listened to these recordings, which we extracted from the recorders, and we noted the calls and identify each species that was recorded during the time of the study. For vegetation variables, we collected these vegetation variables, which are the number of trees at each point, the number of shrubs, the number of trees in flowers and shrubs in flower, the number of trees and fruits in fruit and also shrubs in fruit. We also collected the percentage canopy cover and the percentage of dry grass, the wet grass, and also grass cover within a 20 by 20 meter quadrat at each of the points. And we extracted weather variables from NASA data, which are the variables we extracted on an hourly scale that includes temperature, relative humidity, specific humidity, precipitation, and also speed at 2 meters. So for the results, we actually found 11 species of nocturnal birds belonging to 3 families, which are the Caprimugidae, that is the nightjar, the Strigiformidae, other owls, and the Tyonidae, which comprises of only the barn owl. And from that species, we have record of 2 partial migrants, the plain Niger and the long-tailed Niger, while the remaining 9 species are resident nocturnal bird species. So we found nocturnal bird richness to differ across the different land use types, with the protected area and farmlands having more richness as compared to residential area. So the protected area having more richness is actually a proof that protected areas serve as a refugia for these nocturnal species, especially here in Africa, where there is high level of persecution for these nocturnal species, as many believe they are not birds, but there are other forms of, there are a whole lot of myths surrounding them, and they are not birds, but other form of things coming in that may cause bad omen, especially when it comes to owls. Here in Nigeria, lots of people don't see owls as birds, but therefore they are being referred to as witches. So whenever an owl is being heard calling around a residential area, the first action would be to either chase the owl or to resolve to killing the owl, which is one of the reasons why we have low richness. We recorded low richness in the residential area as compared to protected areas where they have high level of protection. Also, we also noticed that in the residential, the low richness in residential area might actually be as a result of anthropogenic activities, as there has been high level of noise, which is known to affect these bird species and also to max down the call rates of these species, as we are using recorders to have the clues to nocturnal species. But surprisingly, we also found farmlands to record more species as compared to residential area. So this could possibly be that the farmland provides the essential crucial resources that this bird need, especially for the owls, which are known to prey on rodents. As when we collected the data within November to December is actually at post-harvest period, where there might be grain spills and might have attracted rodents and other species that serve as food resources for these nocturnal birds. So canopy cover and shrub in fruit were found to actually have influence on this nocturnal species. So to arrive that, we use a backward stepwise deletion model to arrive at the best model for these vegetation variables. So where we found canopy cover to have a negative, to be a negative predictor of nocturnal bird richness, while shrubs in fruit to be a positive predictor of nocturnal bird richness. So high canopy cover is known to decrease the ease of hunting, especially for nigers that are known to be aerial feeders, and is known to also cause decrease in detection rate, whereas shrubs in fruit has a positive impact on nocturnal bird richness, as the shrubs in fruit might attract insects, which is a crucial resource, food resource for Niger species. For the weather variable, temperature, relative humidity, and wind speed had significant influence on nocturnal bird species richness, with wind speed having a negative influence on it, whereas temperature and relative humidity being positive predictors of nocturnal bird richness. So temperature is known to have a direct effect on avian species and is known to also affect site occupancy and other reproductive functions in birds. And temperature and relative humidity increases insect abundance, which are crucial resources for this nocturnal bird species. Whereas wind speed is known to decrease call rate, to mask bird calls, and therefore restrict communication among conspecifics, possibly the reason why increase in wind speed results to decrease in nocturnal bird species richness. In conclusion, we conclude that farmlands and protected areas had significant higher richness because they provide relative higher resources such as food and protection from persecution from people against residential area where there is higher anthropogenic force, which continue to affect the distribution of these nocturnal species. And also, protected areas and agricultural landscape are important tools for the conservation of nocturnal species, that is nigers and owls. Then also, shrubs in fruit were positive significant predictors of bird abundance and richness, as fruit may provide invitation for insects which are potential prey for the Niger species, and while increase in canopy cover actually reduces the amount of open habitat, which affects the hunting strategy of nocturnal species, especially Nigers that are aerial feeders. So this research is the work of the Nocturnal Ecology Lab at APLORI here in Nigeria, and the team comprises of the PI person of Professor Adams, Inuanam, the coordinator, and myself as an intern. So you can reach me out at any time on this email address here, and also on X and on Facebook. I acknowledge the following people for their contribution to the success of this project. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks a lot, Yitmwa, for this very nice presentation. I will now do a short summary in French before people can ask questions. Donc, Yitmwa, elle a présenté son étude sur son étude de recensement acoustique des oiseaux nocturnes. Donc, elle commence par introduire sur le déclin de la biodiversité, principalement dû aux activités humaines, et que c'est très important de monitorer, de suivre les populations d'oiseaux, parce que les oiseaux sont des très bons indicateurs écologiques de la santé des écosystèmes. Mais il y a très peu d'études sur les oiseaux nocturnes. La plupart des études sont faites sur les espèces d'oiseaux diurnes, pour plusieurs raisons. C'est plus facile d'un point de vue logistique, d'un point de vue sécuritaire, etc. Et il y a surtout très peu d'études sur les oiseaux nocturnes dans les régions tropicales d'Afrique, malgré le rôle de ces espèces très importants dans les écosystèmes, comme par exemple réguler les rongeurs, etc. Donc, elle a fait un suivi acoustique en utilisant des enregistreurs acoustiques dans la forêt protégée d'Amrum, au centre du Nigeria. Elle a comparé du coup cette forêt protégée avec les zones agricoles et résidentielles autour. Elle a mis un enregistreur par site. Je ne sais plus le nombre de sites qu'elle avait exactement, c'était plus d'une vingtaine. Elle a fait ses analyses, ensuite les analyses acoustiques avec un logiciel qui s'appelle Audacity, où elle a identifié les chants d'oiseaux. Elle a aussi récolté certaines variables environnementales, surtout des variables liées à la végétation. Elle en a récolté beaucoup, je ne vais pas les citer ici. Elle a aussi pris en considération des variables météorologiques qu'elle a accédé. C'est des variables qui sont récoltées par la NASA. Ensuite, pour ces résultats, donc en tout, dans leur étude, ils ont recensé 11 espèces d'oiseaux nocturnes, des engoulevents, des chouettes et des hiboux. C'était 3 familles au total. De ces 11 espèces, il y avait 2 espèces qui étaient des migrateurs partiels et les 9 restantes étaient des espèces résidentes. Ils ont trouvé un plus grand nombre d'espèces dans les zones protégées. Et une explication, enfin surtout en comparaison des zones résidentielles, et une explication principale qu'elle a donnée, c'est que surtout en Afrique, les gens n'aiment pas le cri des chouettes qui portent malheur. Du coup, elles sont fréquemment persécutées. Donc, si quelqu'un entend une chouette proche de son habitation, il va la chasser ou la tuer. Et du coup, elles sont moins persécutées et du coup plus protégées dans les zones protégées et aussi dans les zones agricoles. Et dans les zones agricoles, elles peuvent aussi éventuellement bénéficier d'une source importante de rongeurs. Ensuite, elle a présenté ses résultats sur les paramètres de végétation et elle a fait une sélection de modèles qui ont démontré que les variables les plus importantes, c'était l'ouverture de la canopée. Donc, il y avait un effet négatif de la canopée. Plus il y avait de canopée, moins il y avait d'oiseaux nocturnes. Certainement parce que c'est plus difficile à chasser, ça affecte leur, leur champ de vision, on pourrait dire. Elle a aussi trouvé que les buissons ou les arbustes à fruits avaient un effet positif sur les oiseaux nocturnes, peut-être parce qu'ils attirent aussi plus d'insectes qui sont leur nourriture. Ensuite, concernant les variables météorologiques, elle a montré que la température avait un effet positif sur les oiseaux nocturnes, peut-être parce que la température a aussi un effet positif sur les insectes, leur nourriture, et le vent avait un impact négatif, parce que le vent, ça rend peut-être difficile les chants, ça dilue l'effet du chant, ils s'entendent moins bien, du coup ces espèces sont moins vocales, et du coup elles ne sont pas enregistrées lors des suivis acoustiques. Donc pour conclure, elle souligne l'importance des zones protégées et aussi des zones agricoles pour ces espèces d'oiseaux nocturnes. Ces zones du coup dans lesquelles il y a moins de perturbations anthropiques et aussi peut-être plus de nourriture, par exemple plus de rongeurs ou plus d'insectes et elles sont plus ouvertes, donc c'est meilleur enfin, les zones plus ouvertes sont aussi meilleures pour la chasse. Après, elle a rapidement présenté son lab. Ils sont surtout 3 personnes. Elle-même, Inyunam, qu'on a déjà vu plusieurs fois à Friday for Birds, et une professeure Adams.